I feel like my number 1 and 2 on this list can be pretty interchangeable for a lot of people, but honestly, in general, this list was harder than I thought it'd be. What's up, YouTube? My name is Jason, and this is my take, and I'm back with another video, and we're gonna continue with our series of From Worst to First, where I take an artist, we look at their solo work, and we rank it from worst to first. And today we have one of the all-time greats, a living legend, arguably the best rapper of this generation currently, and that is one Kendrick Lamar. Compton, California legend, one of my favorite rappers of all time, who it luckily gets the respect and praise he deserves as a rapper and what he's done in this genre. And so I'm excited to go through this, my rankings here. I hope we can engage and have a lot of conversation, because I feel like my list is not how a lot of lists probably look. But there are 6 albums on this list that start with Section 80, like from then on, and just solo works. So projects like the Black Panther soundtrack that Kendrick was on and executive produced is not on this list. So let's just hop right into it. I don't even have notes for all these albums, because like I can just talk about them so much. That's how much I love Kendrick and his discography. So at the number 6 spot, which already just might get me in trouble, is 2017's Damn. Now, I'm gonna start this off how I've started other videos that I've done for this series by saying that Kendrick, when it comes to these 6 albums, Kendrick's 6 for 6. Like, there's not a bad album on his record, in his discography, but one of them has to be in last, and this is the one for me. Now, I'll start by saying this. I think that this is arguably Kendrick's, like, rawest project. Now, I think that the album that's next in the 5 slot is like what I would call his like rawest and most authentic project, but Damn has a case. We see Kendrick exploring topics of wickedness and weakness and sin, and just how that's affected Kendrick, being in the game and his life and his different experiences. We have love, lust, humble, pride, just these different concepts, just like different states of being that Kendrick explores. Kendrick's energy on here, just his technical ability, everything like really hits. It's really just a matter of the other albums versus this one. I also think just like lyrically and topically, some of the stuff that Kendrick got into like was a little odd, like especially listening back to it now, like I heard a lot more on here that would have me like, I don't know. For example, on the track Fear, and it was also mentioned on the song Yeah, I Believe, is his cousin Carl, who is a Hebrew Israelite, and he had this whole like voicemail at the end of the song talking about minorities kind of putting themselves in this position that we're in that sees us, and it's just like, I don't think it's like my fault that I'm in this position. More like the systems in place. The way Kendrick was talking about it, like it kind of makes you believe that he felt that way too. But like I don't know. That part didn't ruin the album at all for me, but it definitely was something I was like, I'm not with that personally. So that's me. With that being said, this project, I still remember when it came out in 2017, like where I was and how great it sounded. That outro at Ninth Wonder and those 3 different beats were ridiculous. So with that, Damn is in my last spot. At the number 5 spot is Kendrick's latest album that he dropped last year, and that is Mr. M.A.A.d and the Big Steppers. Honestly, this album might not stay in this spot because the album continuously like grows and sounds different to me as I listen to it more. And I think that I don't even know how to explain that or how an album can do that, but this one is one of the few that has. I think this is Kendrick at his most raw and authentic, as this whole album, this double disc, feels like a therapy session in which Kendrick is just like laying it out. We learn a lot about Kendrick's past and the different things that he battled with and dealt with This generational curse that he speaks on, that he feels has been lifted as he's, really grown as a father, as a husband, as a person. And, he lets that all out on this album. We have Kodak on here, which was surprising, but going back to Damn and the Hebrew Israelite thing I mentioned, and Kodak being a part of that, kind of makes a little more sense now that I think about it. But he was great on Silent Hill, Ghostface, Summer Walker, Sampha. It was great production. Pharrell jumps back on with Kendrick and is on here. We had Alchemist on here. Kendrick delivered like we always thought he would, but this one was just a little different, especially when it came to the topics and the content. And Kendrick just shows that he can be very profound, very deep in the things that he talks about, and it never just comes off boring, preachy, or corny. And so that continued here on Mr. m.A.A.d. Number 4 on my list is 2016's Untitled, Unmastered. Now, whether we count this as an album or not, doesn't matter. It's an album to me, even if it's B-sides. But the fact that a B-sides album from To Pimp a Butterfly is this, like I can say that it's better than 2 other Kendrick projects, that says a lot. Only 8 tracks, but this felt like a full album. It's like 35, 36 minutes of the stuff that we didn't get to hear on 2015's To Pimp a Butterfly. No titles on here. Like, this thing is definitely way more in its sound and its mixing. Everything is very much more raw and dusty, and it was almost perfect to me. We hear a lot of those themes that we heard on To Pimp, especially when it comes to blackness, when it comes to being in the industry and some of the dark things that artists have faced. The money and its meaning and its value. Kendrick continues that on here with a lot of TDE features from Punch, SZA, J-Rock, and we get a CeeLo Green feature on here that was really good. It's just Kendrick in Kendrick form. Like, I feel like Kendrick is one of those people that would drop a deluxe project that I would actually listen to. Like sometimes, like, I don't want a deluxe from certain artists or from people, but like Kendrick's like deluxe could like go toe to toe with his regular albums, and I think that showed here. Number 3 on my list is Section 80. Now, this is what a lot of people consider to be Kendrick's debut album. I think it's like actually like an EP or something else that it's like called, but this is a legendary record. It just couldn't go any higher than this on the list because of the other 2, but this is a classic to me personally. Like, ADHD is on here. Hold up, the intro, Rigor Mortis, Rigor freaking Mortis. Don't forget that's one of them ones. J. Cole produces the outro, High Power, on here, another legendary track. Kendrick, this was like really like my intro to Kendrick, and just hearing somebody that was so unique. Like, he used his voice a lot more, like, I guess weirdly in a way than I think he does now. Like that alien like tone and that voice that he uses. He really used that a lot to his benefit on here and projects before. I think that this like really set the foundation for Good Kid, Mad City, and the way that Kendrick goes about, telling these stories from track to track, how they flow into one another, and just like keeping us on this like vivid ride. Like I feel like it started here, and going into his albums after that, like it just makes sense. I always go back to this album when I just hear these new ones. I'm like, to me, it just feels like this is where it started. And Section 80, man, maybe like one track I don't like listen to like that on here, honestly. But if I'm playing this album, nothing's getting skipped. I love this album. It's a classic, and it's at my number 3 spot. Our final 2 spots here. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like my number 2 is what a lot of people would put at number 1. But I've heard people go both ways. So at number 2 for me is Good Kid, Mad City. This is what I and a lot of people, this is Kendrick's like true debut album, and it was one for the history books. Like, what you love about a Ready to Die or a Illmatic, and like learning about an artist and just like that full story, painting that picture. This is one of those albums. Like this is really a movie. Like, from the skits that just flow and bring everything together perfectly, to like the stories within the songs. Like the Art of Peer Pressure is just one of the most vivid like songs, one of the most vivid stories that I've ever heard, because I felt like I was like in that back seat, like with Kendrick, like going like on this mission, like with him and his friends. Like, it was just incredible how Kendrick really made an album and a full-length film at the exact same time. Kendrick really just like embraces where he's from in the West Coast with these sounds. Dr. Dre is on this album from a feature standpoint and a production standpoint. His former TDE like teammate J-Rock and him drop arguably his greatest song ever in Money Trees. One of the only times we ever hear Kendrick and Drake on a track again is on the legendary Poetic Justice. Like, this thing just has so many moments, and it's crazy to believe that we're going on year 11 now that since this album has been out, and it still has aged beautifully and standing the test of time, and is honestly one of the greatest rap albums of all time. And that leaves us with number one, and of course that is 2015's To Pimp a Butterfly. Now, just off the rip, this and Kanye's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy are like two of the greatest albums of all time to me. So obviously, like, these, like To Pimp a Butterfly is just like one of the greatest things I've ever heard personally. A flawless record. I can't skip a track on here if I tried. Not even the outro, Mortal Man, with that like amazing like Tupac like interview that he set up, like with the DAP and how they were talking. It really felt like that actually happened, and that was incredible. But I think just the fact that what Kendrick was diving into and just how relatable it was, being black and the things that we faced and what's going on in society, like that album in a way like felt like it came out at the perfect time, but it was also like a little ahead of its time, especially with what's going on now in Americans, all these different things. Like, Kendrick knew what he was doing. Like he knew what he was doing with this album. This thing has soul, like it's funky, like it has that West Coast bounce to it at times. Like, it's just so many different flavors that come together and being such a cohesive project that sees Kendrick like at his most, arguably his most vulnerable to Mr. Morale when it comes to getting into the game and really seeing what fame feels like, especially when you're away from home, you're away from family, you're new to the money. Like, it just opens the door for a lot of good, but also a lot of bad. And that really took place with Kendrick, especially with his mental health and wanting to be the best, but also wanting to make sure that he was taking care of those that took care of him, and not forgetting where he came from. This album just has a lot to it. Like, it's a lot. It took me a lot of listens to like get a lot of what was going on, but I felt the greatness of it from the first listen, and it's one of the greatest to me. Like, and then nobody can like change that for me. Like, I still go back to this thing and it still hits every time, and that is why it is my number one ranked Kendrick Lamar album. So thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know in the comments what your list is, if you agree with mine, if it's crazy. Let's talk about it. But this has been my ranking of Kendrick's albums. Thank you guys for joining me for another week of Jason's Take. I'm back and I'm not going anywhere this year. Next week, I'm definitely doing a little Yachty review. I wanted to sit with it a little more, but I'm doing a review next week, and we'll see what else we get into. But it's good to be back. Hope you guys like and subscribe to the channel. I'm Jason. This has been my take, and I'll see you next time.